Archaeology is defined as systematic and scientific excavation of a site. Actually, a part of archaeology deals with systematic and scientific excavation of a site, which basically suggests that we dig up a site, we obtain all the information that we get from the features, from the data, we collect the material culture from the site, including the antiquities, pottery, bones, etc., and then we record them and document them, and then we weave up the story of a site and we try to fill up the gaps that are there in the research. Archaeology, in a very non-traditional way and also in a very on a lighter note, is also systematic scientific destruction of a site, because when we are excavating, we are destroying the site as we are going further down to the natural soil. So as we are uncovering layers after layers, we are actually documenting the destroyed evidence as we are uncovering the new evidence. So archaeology is the cycle that of uncovering and destroying of evidence, but it is done in a scientific mean where we collect all the data, even the minutest data. The next step after we excavate any site is to rebury the site. The reason why we rebury most of the site is because we don't have conservation means, or we don't have any methodology available to us to conserve all the sites for public viewing or create these sites into open air museums. We also lack a lot of manforce and post excavation management of the site and maintenance of the site. So imagine if a lot of effort goes in excavating any material, excavating any structure, it takes a hell lot more to actually conserve that, maintain those features, and to preserve it for future generation for viewing. It's simple. It's similar to what we do usually with built heritage or with monuments. Almost all the sites in India are being excavated and reburied. There are few examples like Dholavira and Lothal, which were excavated and then they were conserved, and now you can go and visit these sites anytime you want. But you also know that there are many sites which were also on the verge of being extinct, and then archaeologists have to come up with another tool to sort of rescue these sites, and then in one instance that very site was replicated, the remains were transplanted, and it is now an open air site which you can go and visit anytime you want to. Hello, my name is Disha Ahluwalia. I'm an archaeologist and a columnist, and in this week's column I'll be talking about that very site which was on the verge of being destroyed, and archaeologists have to come up with a tool to rescue these remains and replicate and transplant few of the structures to create an open air site. This effort was one of a kind, which was done in the years following the partition of India and Pakistan. Now go back to 1947 to 1950. Imagine in a newly formed country which lacked a lot of infrastructure, the government, not only the center but the state governments, also have to now resort to new methods to provide infrastructure to people. Construction of dams was one of those things that government needed to do to provide irrigation for people, for agriculture purposes. So many sites were then subjected to were on the verge of being destroyed due to this, because a lot of sites, you know that many archaeological sites are on the banks of river. So when you construct a dam, you're basically blocking water and creating these man-made lakes or reservoirs, and therefore because of that a large area sort of gets flooded. This is the exact thing that happened in the case of construction of the reservoir called Nagarjuna Sagar reservoir in Guntur district of Andhra Pradesh. There's a site called Nagarjunakonda, which is famously named after the Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna, and Konda in Telugu means hill. So it was basically, there are a lot of hills around, and it was a site in a valley, and this site dates back to early Stone Age, and it has a continuous cultural sequence right from early Stone Age all the way to medieval period. So when the archaeologists knew that the site which was first attracted attention of archaeologists and researchers in 1926, and it was then excavated in right from 1927 to 31. Archaeologists in 1950 and 51 knew that this site is of utmost importance. It shows a lot of potentiality, and therefore it's the need of the hour to excavate this site thoroughly, scientifically, record all the data, and then to transplant the most important structural evidence from that site to an area, an elevated area in that very region, and to create an open air museum. So this happened around 1954, when the site was first subjected to excavation after the authorities decided to construct the dam. Now before 1954, of course, the site was excavated in 1926, 27, and then in 1930s. But 1954's excavation was very important. It's sort of done with an agenda to rescue these remains from the site, and not with the agenda of excavating and reburying, what I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this video. So here the archaeologists had they knew that they are going to get into this very exhaustive operation of rescuing the site of Nagarjunakonda. The type of excavation where the remains are rescued and then they are transplanted and put in a safer area and they are preserved for generations to come is known as salvage archaeology. Egyptian site in Nubia is also subjected to salvage archaeology. Nagarjunakonda, however, is one of the earliest classical example of salvage archaeology that we have today in the country, where not only the remains were rescued and salvaged, they were also created into this open air museum that I have spoken earlier as well. When the archaeologists in 1950s started to excavate the site, they found that there is a thick concentration of structures and not only of one particular period but spanning from early Stone Age. They found a lot of stone tools, and then the structural activity was of the early historic period. There was a remain of a citadel, a palace. There were many wells, tanks, moat, rampart wall, which was excavated during this time. Apart from the citadel, there were also a lot of residential complex, a lot of shops, area of craft specialization. In one instance, they also found a lot of bulk raw material, which suggests that this was a place of a blacksmith, and also of a person who specialized in creating jewelry. And apart from this, there were also a lot of religious structures such as Brahminical temples. Now these temples were mostly concentrated around the citadel, and also there were few which were also spread away from the citadel, but the thick concentration of these temples were around the citadel. Apart from this, there were a lot of Buddhist evidence of Buddhist architecture, stupas, viharas, and viharas are the monasteries, and also the chaitya, the prayer halls as well. These stupas and these Buddhist architectural remains were of a very peculiar character. They were for the region and also for this part of the subcontinent as well. And there was also a remain of an amphitheater that was excavated. There were also a lot of megalithic burials. Now, talking of megalithic burials, in 2015, when the water level in the reservoir was below the minimum level, over 200 megalithic burials were exposed. So when these 200 megalithic burials were exposed, people started talking about the importance of Nagarjunakonda all over again. Now, during the excavation as well, they found a lot of megalithic burials, and as I mentioned earlier, that the site's chronology is right from early Stone Age. It has Neolithic, then megalithic, then early historic, and all the way to medieval period. So one can understand the site was quite important and it was strategically placed. Therefore, it facilitated continuous occupation of that area. Today, Few of the remains, such as the amphitheater, one of the megalithic structures, stupas, viharas, and there's also a Hariti temple, which is now replicated, and also some of the remains are transplanted. So when I say some remains are transplanted, I mean that they were uprooted from their original place, and in the exact same fashion, with the exact material, they were transplanted, and they were recreated in a much safer area. Today, you can very well visit Nagarjunakonda. If you ever are visiting the Guntur area, the Guntur district, do visit Nagarjunakonda. You can take motor boat ride from the jetty all the way to the sort of like a hillock and elevated area in the Nagarjuna Sagar, and you can see these remains for yourself. The reason why I wanted to write about Nagarjunakonda in this week's column was to sort of educate people that in archaeology, which we jokingly keep talking, I joke around and I often say that archaeology is a systematic scientific destruction, but apart from that, there's also we have to undertake the task of saving a lot of these remains. Now with growing, our city limits are growing, and we need more space to accommodate growing population. We need more space to even produce agricultural goods and for other activity. These archaeological sites are on the verge of extinction. Many sites are today in dire need of excavation only for the purpose of safeguarding, right? Only for the purpose of safeguarding these materials, so we can keep the data in our records for future research. Now imagine if that exhaustive effort done in 1950s for 6 years was not undertaken by Archaeological Survey of India. You would have not even had the necessary information you needed to understand the importance of Nagarjunakonda as an archaeological and historical site. But thank God for that effort made by archaeologists way back in 1950s, which facilitated and ensured that we have this data for future research. Today we do need to go back and we need to re-excavate the site, but I think that won't be possible because the dam is necessary as well. But with modern technology, with a lot of technology at a disposal, maybe we can try out a non-invasive way of excavation and try and understand Nagarjunakonda in a different light. I only hope that happens. But the reason why I wanted to give this message out is that sites are rapidly disappearing. I remember in 2015 excavating a site which was a small site in Rajasthan on the beds of river Ghaggar. And in 2016, when I revisited the site, I had only excavated a small trench, 5x5 trench, just to take samples for dating and to get samples for other analysis. And when the next year I visited the site was half gone. And the year after that, in 2017, when I revisited the site, I could find nothing. So imagine, sites are going and rapidly disappearing. And job of an archaeologist is to sort of to get the data in whatever way we can. And salvage archaeology is one of the important tools that came into existence in 1950s and 1960s, which has really helped Indian archaeology and also really helped reconstructing our past. I can cite many examples for this to support my argument. There's another site, very important Buddhist site, which is called Devni Mori, which is now also submerged, just like Nagarjunakonda. The site of Devni Mori is in Gujarat. Here again, a lot of Buddhist stupas, viharas, chaityas were found, and in one of the stupas there was a casket which had relics, and the inscription says that these are the sacred relics. So imagine if the site was not excavated. Unfortunately, although the site was excavated, because the archaeologists were alerted that the site will be submerged, they excavated the site for a longer period of time, and we have the report, we have the data today. But the site, unlike Nagarjunakonda, was not transplanted, was not salvaged in the way of sort of recreating. But an important site that Nagarjunakonda and Devni Mori both are. Thank God that we have the tool of salvage archaeology to our aid. And all of us can actually do a little bit of salvage archaeology, even if you're not an archaeologist. Protect archaeological sites, and even if you think the sites are not protected, tell archaeologists, inform the authorities, and urge them to at least excavate a small trench, so to get enough information about the site and to record that information for future research. If we don't do this now, we might not find more sites to excavate in future. So for more details on Nagarjunakonda and more details on the excavation, you can go and read my column. The link will be in the description box below. And for more such informative videos on art, culture, history, and also of course politics, do subscribe to the channel and also follow ThePrint on various social media platforms. Until next time, thank you so much for listening.